As the official death toll in Gaza nears 34,000, we begin today's show looking at Germany's intensifying crackdown on pro-Palestinian voices. On Friday, police in Berlin shut down a three-day Palestinian conference just moments after it began. In addition, Germany's Interior Ministry banned several speakers from even entering Germany or addressing the Palestine Congress conference remotely. The Palestinian researcher Salman Abu Sitta opened the conference, but his remarks over a live stream were cut short when Berlin police raided the conference site.
We have never seen before these daily scenes, one massacre after another. Homes demolished over the heads of the occupants. Bodies pulled from under the rubble. Surviving child with all his family killed. We have never seen before people deliberately denied food and water, children starved to death and killed when rushing to get food. We have never seen before all means of life systematically destroyed, hospitals, clinics, schools, universities, libraries, ancient monuments, mosques, churches, universities, cemeteries, bakeries, apartment buildings.
So for all people in the live stream, the police is standing right in front of us and they ask us to stop the video.
They're even trying to take away this microphone.
That was a live stream capturing the moment when German police raided and shut down the Palestine Congress conference in Berlin just minutes after it began. On Friday, German authorities also detained and questioned the Palestinian British surgeon, Dr. Ghassan Abu-Sittah, who had flown into Germany to speak at the Palestine Congress. Dr. Abu-Sittah, who is the nephew of Salman Abu Sitta, who we just watched interrupted, spoke to Middle East Eye after he was barred entry.
Upon arrival, I was stopped at the passport office. I was then escorted down to the basement of the airport, where I was questioned for around 3.5 hours. At the end of 3.5 hours, I was told that I will not be allowed to enter German soil, that that this ban will last the whole of April, and not just that, that if I were to try to link up by Zoom or FaceTime with the conference, even if I was outside Germany, or I were to send a video of my lecture to the conference in Berlin, then that would constitute a breach of German law, and that I would endanger myself to having a fine or even up to a year of prison.
That was the Palestinian British surgeon, Dr. Ghassan Abu-Sittah, who had flown into Germany to speak at the Palestine Congress, but was denied entry to Germany. German authorities defended the decision to shut down the Palestinian conference, citing German laws against so-called hate speech. When Dr. Abu-Sittah came out of Gaza, we interviewed him, and you can go to democracynow.org to see that conversation. We're joined right now by former Greek finance minister Yanis Varoufakis. He was also banned from entering Germany and barred from engaging in any political activity there. Varoufakis is a leader of the pan-European progressive movement DiEM25, which helped organize the Palestine Congress. Welcome to Democracy Now! Yanis Varoufakis is the former finance minister of Greece. His most recent book is Techno-feudalism. What Killed Capitalism is the subtitle. Yanis Varoufakis, can you explain what happened in Berlin?
To give you a vignette, Amy, of the absurdity, which would have been funny if it wasn't so tragic of what went on. During the morning, just before the police burst in, as you described so accurately, there was a young man an attendee of the Congress, a member of the Jewish Voice for Peace, which together with the Mera25, DiEM25, we will co-organize the Palestine Congress. And this young man as he approached the police cordon, there were 2,500 policemen preventing our attendees from attending the Congress. Anyway, he was approaching and he had a little placard that he had written with his own hand, and it read, "Jews against genocide." And for that, he was apprehended, arrested, manhandled. And while the police were manhandling him, he turned around humorfully or half-jokingly and said to them, "Would it have been all right with you if it said Jews in favor of genocide?" At which point, of course, they were far more angered and manhandled him even more fiercely. I'm conveying this to you, Amy, and to our listeners and viewers, because this shows the absurdity of the whole thing. The police entered the building, the venue, a few minutes before I was due to deliver my talk via video link. As a result, what I did was I recorded my talk and I posted it online from Greece, from Athens, where I'm even now. And the next day, I found out that a ban, as you put it, was slapped on me by the German authorities. A ban that harks back to laws against Nazis, and a law that has only been used recently for ISIS operatives. That was used against me. Allow me just to briefly say that the rationale behind this is the Germans' Staatsräson, the logic or rationale of this German state to protect Jews, which is an excellent rationale. I wish every state had it, each one of us had it, to protect Jews, except that this is not about protecting Jewish lives and Jews from anti-Semitism. It's all about protecting the right of Israel to commit any war crime of its choice in the final analysis.
And Yanis Varoufakis, the federal interior minister of Germany, not only applauded the police action, but she described the event, the conference, as an Islamist conference. What do you think of that characterization of the Palestine Congress?
Isn't it remarkably farcical that our Jewish comrades who helped us co-organize, put together this Congress, have been dismissed as Islamists? Let me be clear. There were no Islamists in this. And in any case, the reason why our Congress has been so, let's say, unpopular with the German political system is because the German political spectrum, and this is not just the government, this is also the opposition, including some members of the left, I say with deep regret, some of my former comrades, they insist on equating acts of terror, atrocities against civilians, which every soundly thinking person in the world should condemn, and I condemn, of course, and so do all the organizers of this Congress, equating, however, violence against civilians with a principled resistance to an apartheid state, which is part of a project of systematically, ethnically cleansing the population of the Palestinians. That is what they do not want. They do not want a Congress like ours, especially one that includes progressive Jews. That is the main thing that they detested, that they were Jewish demonstrators, Jewish activists, Jewish intellectuals, Jewish speakers with us, with one voice saying one thing alone: equal political rights, civil liberties from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. I'm neither a Jew nor a Palestinian. I don't have a view as to how this will be accomplished, but I think every single human person on this planet has an obligation, not a right, an obligation to demand from the river to the sea equal political rights. And the German political establishment does not want to listen to this. They simply want to associate anyone who opposes Netanyahu's government or any government in Israel that perpetrates genocide, essentially, to be associated, to be stigmatized as an anti-Semite, which, by the way, it is the anti-Semites' greatest dream come true.
Now, Germany has also banned the display of the Palestinian flag. How do you think the suppression of pro-Palestinian protests in Germany, has that spread to other countries in Europe? What's your sense of what's going on throughout the rest of the continent?
Not formally. The Palestinian flag has not been banned formally, but I can tell you that even here in Greece, anyone who is sporting the colors of Palestine, walking on the street, seriously risks being assaulted by ultra-rightists, being arrested, apprehended by police for some pretext. The bourgeois liberal democratic rights and principles have all been sacrificed on the altar of enabling Israel to complete the genocide which is carrying out. It is carrying out not just in Gaza, but as we heard before in the news bulletin, in East Jerusalem and in the West Bank. In the same way that in the 1930s, we all had an obligation, a duty, an ethical commitment, or should have had one, to support Jews and to show our solidarity to the Jewish people who were suffering from the Nazi regime, from the Croat Nazi regime, from the Greek fascists and so on. We have a duty today to end the genocide in ancient Palestine.
Yanis Varoufakis, as a former finance minister, a vocal critic of austerity, how do you perceive Germany's position on the war on Gaza in light of its significant arms sales to Israel? I mean, you have Nicaragua taking Germany to the International Court of Justice, saying that by providing weapons for Israel to carry out this war, that it's engaging in crimes against humanity or war crimes.
Well, Amy, it's interesting and I think not coincidental that on the Monday before the invasion, the incursion by the German police into our Palestinian Congress in the venue in Berlin, I happened to be in Milan, in Italy, in Milan, and I was giving a speech to a gathering of hundreds of financial analysts at the top, the creme de la creme of European financial experts. And in it, unbeknownst to me of what was going to happen later on that week, I outlined dire prognostications about the long-term damage inflicted upon Germany and Germany's social economy by decades of austerity, combined with impressive largesse for finances, what you call in the United States quantitative easing. And, you know, I was really surprised because here I am, a lefty, addressing a gathering of hundreds of financial experts. Those hard-nosed financiers actually applauded me, and afterwards they came to me and they said that they agree with what I was saying. And I have to tell you that when that happens, I get really worried. Because if these hard-nosed financiers, many of them German, came to me and they said that they agreed with my prognosis that the German business model is kaput, is in dire straits, I start feeling very uncomfortable. So I think there is a connection. Because here you have a political system in Germany which understands in its bones that the economic dominance that the German industrial model had within the European Union for so many decades is now waning. And when such a regime feels threatened, feels that its economic prowess and authority and dominance is waning, it's really very easy for that to translate itself into movements that essentially fan the flames of increasing and increasingly farcical authoritarianism.
I also want to ask you, Yanis Varoufakis, about Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks. The Wall Street Journal is reporting now that the government of Australia asked the U.S. last week if it could reach a felony plea deal with Assange that could result in his return home. I think also today is the deadline for the U.S. government to answer questions that the British judges had, guaranteeing that he would not be given the death penalty if found guilty, and questioning what kind of free speech rights he would have.
Amy, before I answer your question, full disclosure, I'm a very close friend of Julian Assange, and I have been part of the campaign to release him. His only crime is journalism. And because of that reality, I mean, think about it. What he has done is just straightforward journalistic work, which the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, the Spiegel used in order to reveal to the people of the United States, to the people of Germany, to the people of Britain, and so on, about the crimes that our governments have perpetrated behind our backs in our name. That, his crime was journalism. The Australian government, this government by Prime Minister Albanese, initially, after his election, claimed that he was demanding from the United States that the United States, and in particular Joe Biden, drop the charges and drop the request to the British authorities for Julian Assange's extradition. Clearly, they were not heard. And now they are talking about a plea bargain. I can tell you, Julian is never going, even if his life depends on it, and his life does depend on it, is never going to plead guilty as if journalism is a crime. It is despicable that the government of Australia, given that Julian Assange is an Australian citizen, should be diminishing its own reputation by begging for a plea deal that essentially gives the United States authorities and the national security apparatus what they want. And that is a conviction for Julian. They cannot stand that Julian Assange has never been convicted of a crime. They want him to be convicted of a crime which they can then portray as a violation of American law, of America's statutes, and so on. He's never violated any law, except that he has been a pain in the neck for those who were committing crimes in the name of the American people behind their backs.
And Yanis Varoufakis, we only have a few minutes left, but I did want to take the opportunity to ask you about your most recent book, Techno-feudalism, What Killed Capitalism. I'm wondering if you could lay out some of the amazing arguments that you make, especially about the new feudal lords and the rest of us becoming serfs of techno-feudalism.
Thank you for the question. Look, the moment you enter Amazon.com, you've exited capitalism. It looks like capitalism, but it isn't. There are thousands of buyers and sellers, but we are all, whether we are buying or selling on Amazon.com, we are all the serfs of Jeff Bezos. He doesn't produce anything. He simply has encased us in that digital fiefdom, I call it a cloud fiefdom, using very powerful algorithmic capital, which I also call cloud capital. And every time you buy anything, from a book to an electric bicycle on Amazon.com, which he's not produced, he charges up to 40% to the vassal capital that has produced it. So markets have been replaced by these digital thieves, and profit has increasingly been siphoned off into what is essentially a kind of rent, like the feudal lords of yesteryear used to charge rent or extract rents from the serfs. My view is that this is what already has happened. In other words, capitalism was killed by capital, not by us of the left, not by trades unions. Capital became so triumphant that, like a stupid virus, it mutated into a very toxic version which killed its host, capitalism. That's the basic premise of my book, with repercussions going as far as explaining the new Cold War between the United States and China, because let's face it, the United States and China are the two countries, economic blocks that contain a lot of this cloud capital. Europe doesn't have it. The rest of the world doesn't have it.
You write that techno-feudalism enslaves our minds. It rewrites the rules of global power. But you also talk about ultimately what it will take to overthrow it. What are your thoughts on this as the former Greek finance minister, Yanis?
Well, imagine a world in which you have the right to your own data, which cannot be harvested by anyone. And if anybody harvests it, you can actually sue them for billions. Then everything would change very, very quickly. Imagine if you, Amy, or I want to leave Twitter, especially after Elon Musk took it. But if I go to Blue Sky or somewhere else, I lose 1 million followers. Imagine that you could carry your followers along with you through a piece of legislation that imposes interoperability. And if you want us to go a bit more radically to the left, imagine a world in which every corporation is owned by the people who work in them, that shares become like library cards in universities and colleges, where you simply get it while you're there and you lose it when you're not there. Suddenly you have a very different world. And if you add to that a digital wallet provided by the Fed to every American resident, suddenly, why would you want to have an account with Bank of America or with Citigroup, who now own your money? They own the payment system. So these are some ideas that progressives can fight around the world if we want to free ourselves from the clutches of the techno-feudal lords, which today not only force us to do things on their behalf, but actually very much train us, to train them, to train us, to train them, to input desires into our heads.
Yanis Varoufakis, I want to thank you for being with us, former finance minister of Greece. His most recent book is Techno-feudalism, What Killed Capitalism. German police just broke up a conference that was co-sponsored by his organization DiEM25, dealing with Palestinian rights.